Hi, my name is Jason Dell. I'm the Enterprise Security Architect, as Steve mentioned. And I've been with Network Solutions for a long time, and I've done a lot of designs for a lot of verticals, including K-12. And with us also is Matt Baringer. Matt, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Matt Baringer. I run the managed service sales practice at Port 53. I've been with the company about 7 years, and I was digging around earlier to see just how many K through 12 organizations we support. It's been around 100 over the last 7 years that I've worked here. So a very critical vertical for us, and excited for the chat today.
Okay, great. All right, let's get started then. So our topic today is Secure Your World, K-12 edition. And again, wouldn't be a proper security presentation without some scary stats. These stats are pertaining to K-12 in particular. Over 116 school districts hit by ransomware in 2024, impacting an estimated 2,200 plus K-12 schools. Over 51 US K-12 ransomware victims claimed by threat actors. That's in 2024. Last stat, 82% of reporting K-12 schools experienced cyber threats. Between July 2023 and December 2024, a period saw 9,300 confirmed cybersecurity incidents across 5,000 K-12 organizations. Fairly new, is this Senate Bill 472 called SEA 472, Senate Enrolled Act, which is a bill that originated in the Indiana Senate and passed by both legislative chambers, and formally signed into law. So this bill applies to, among other organizations, Indiana K-12 school corporations, public school districts, charter, and traditional schools. So part of this is, as of July 2025, any cybersecurity incidents must be reported to the Indiana Office of Technology and the Indiana Department of Education within 2 business days of discovery. And K-12 must detect, document, and report incidents. Haven't seen or heard of any similar bill for Michigan. So, but if this is starting to go around with the individual states, I would say something like this is probably similar out or in the works for Michigan as well. Okay. All right. So which school, or rather, there's no shortage of security tools available in today's wide variety of very specific protection, but each tool has a specific purpose. So let's say you're just for illustration, you're protecting your home. Okay. If you're going to protect your home, you might get a number of security tools, including locks on the doors. You might have deadbolts on the doors for sort of multi-factor authentication, if you will. You have locks on the windows. You might have a security camera on your front door, which, tells you when packages show up, but also when people are lurking around your front door. You may have security cameras in other areas around the outside, or even cameras and motion sensors inside your house to detect motion, either at night or when you're not at home. You may subscribe to a security monitoring service to inform the law enforcement if there's a problem, and you might even have big mean dogs. Okay, so for companies, they could use the same tools as home security, probably minus the big dogs. Some, I suppose, might have big mean dogs, but most won't. They might also have interior door locks, security guards. They might have razor wire fence. In addition, soft tools, if you will, so policies, procedures, and standards, compliance and regulations, background checks, etc. So, pertaining to information security, the same concept applies to security tools. Each tool has a specific purpose, and not every set of tools is appropriate for every company. So let's review a subset of the more common security tools. Okay. First up is the next generation firewall. Traditionally, you'll see it at the internet edge. Provides northwest or north-south traffic protection, right? That means north being the internet, south being your LAN. So north-south traffic is traffic going to and from the internet. You may also find Cisco secure fire or next generation firewalls within your data center or in your LAN WAN to do some segmentation. So when I say next generation firewall, this is different than your old school stateful firewalls. Next generation firewall provides deeper visibility, application visibility and control through deep packet inspection, which opens the door to, intrusion prevention, anti-malware, and content filtering, security intelligence, right, to keep up on where the malicious infrastructures are in the world, and visibility and protection into encrypted sessions without decryption, right? The next generation firewall can integrate with several tools, including Cisco XDR, Cisco Secure Endpoint, Cisco Identity Services Engine, Cisco Umbrella or Secure Access, Cisco Hybrid Mesh Firewall, and Cisco Secure Workload. Each of those tools, again, have their specific purpose. We'll talk about some of those here shortly. Okay. Cisco Secure Endpoint is an EDR. That's an endpoint detection and response. That's your endpoint protection. So the EDR is really the workhorse of protection in today's security landscape because of its mobility, the depth of visibility, and its ability to correlate events. So your sort of old school point in time antivirus is not going to do the same as your EDR. The prior is completely insufficient for today's threat landscape. And EDR really provides a lot of deep visibility into the movement and activity of files throughout a particular endpoint and how it relates to other endpoints that also have the same EDR client on there, which is great for correlation, right? So the Cisco Secure Endpoint can integrate with other security tools, including Cisco XDR, Cisco Secure Client, Cisco Secure File Analytics, Cisco Orbital, and Cisco ICE. Excuse me. Next up, we have Identity Services Engine. So AAA, Authentication, Authorization, and Accounting. Authentication is who and or what are you? You might be a user. You might be a user with a machine, or you might be a machine, right? Meaning an IoT device. So your AAA can authenticate you based on just your user or on your user and your machine or just a machine type, all three of those types. And provide the second A is authorization, meaning now that you've authenticated, proved who you are. Here's where you're allowed to go to. All right. And the second thing, so the use cases for AAA are secure wireless access. Pre-shared keys aren't really sufficient anymore. Prove who and what you are, and then we'll tell you where you're allowed to go to. Same for secure wired access. In yesteryear, people didn't worry about secure wired access as much because they depended on application and network directory services security to protect their applications, but that really doesn't cut it in today's day and age. You don't want any unauthorized equipment plugged into your wired network and doing probing your network for any weaknesses. The next use case is guest onboarding. If you want to control who has access to your guest network, and the use case there is maybe to mitigate parking lot surfing. Someone pulls up close to your building after hours, gets internet, does some illegal activity, and then you got people questioning you, right, knocking on your door and saying, what's going on here? Device administration speaks to the ability to control access and authentication and authorization to command line TACX capable network devices like Cisco switches and Cisco routers, and other devices that are TACX capable. Microsegmentation keeps traffic just within the segment that it needs to work in and protects the other segments in case there's an outbreak within a particular segment. Posture compliance speaks to what kind of device you have. Is it permitted to be on the network? Maybe you only want certain operating systems on the network. They need to have certain patch levels. They need to have one of a list of whatever you control, endpoint detection and response software on there that needs to have a desktop firewall. It needs to have disk encryption. A lot of different things you can do for compliance. ICE gives you a very granular level of posture control. And finally, ICE integrates with other tools, including Cisco XDR, Cisco Secure Firewall, Cisco Secure Endpoint, Cisco Secure Network Analytics, Cisco Duo, certain mobile device managers, third-party vulnerability tools, and PX grid-capable solutions. Okay. Speaking of SNA, Cisco Secure Network Analytics. this uses your network as a sensor. So as you're connected to your physical network infrastructure and you're talking to other endpoints and other applications, your network sees that traffic, and it can give information on that traffic. Which IP addresses are going where? What's the traffic patterns? Who are the top talkers, top listeners? With a threat feed, you can determine if somebody's trying to connect to malicious external infrastructures, right? So with that information, it can set a baseline of normal traffic and can alert you when there's anomalous traffic. For example, if you've got an endpoint that's doing a port scan. Okay, so this comes into play. In particular, it protects, in addition to, right, your EDR tells you what's going on from the perspective of the endpoint and the other endpoints, but you may have devices that don't have an EDR client that can be installed on it. Right? Protect those IoT devices or network infrastructure devices, anything that connects to the network that doesn't have an EDR client on there. So SNA can give you information about that and tell you when there's anomalous behavior or potentially malicious behavior. And then it can integrate with other tools like ICE to potentially boot them off the network, off the production network, and into, let's say, a remediation segment. SNA can integrate with Cisco XDR, Cisco Secure Firewall, and Cisco ICE. Email security is a topic that people don't talk about enough, but everybody should talk about. It's a top threat vector. It is the number one method of contracting ransomware. And it obviously does a lot of very deep security controls and checks on email to look for malicious content. So two different types of email security. A secure email gateway protects northwest traffic. That means traffic is coming and going from your email system, right? Your organization. So if it's going from your organization to another organization, that's south north. The other way from another organization to you, that's north south. And so email that comes through there is sent through an email proxy, scrubbed, checked for malicious content, malicious files, right? Malware or embedded scripts or content, spam, links to go to malicious destinations, phishing, lots of things. It's a very mature technology and it's very effective, but its limitation is that it can only do north-south protection. If you're sending an email to the person sitting in the next cubicle, it doesn't go outside of your organization. That's east-west traffic, right? If you will, within an email system. And so since it's not leaving your email system, it doesn't go through the secure email gateway. And so if a particular endpoint is compromised, and it's taking over your email client and blasting out malicious email, then your interior people don't get any protection from a secure email gateway. That's where the second method of email security comes in. So the prior, I'll just say Northwest, the secure email gateway. Cisco's solution for that is called the secure client, or rather cloud email security. Yeah. So that's your secure email gateway. And then the second way I was mentioning is where it uses the journaling feature in your email system. The journaling feature, I think years ago, was implemented to archive email. But in the case of email security, what it can do is for any email going north, south, or east or west, it can get a copy of that email sent to email threat defense. And then email threat defense can analyze that for any sort of threats. And if it does find there's a threat, then sort of on the back end through an API, it can talk to your email system and move email out of your inbox. And if it's malicious email, just delete it. And if it's just spam or suspected spam, then it can move into your trash folder, right? That happens instantly. So you don't even notice it, right? So, those two can work well together as well. You need the secure email gateway if you're going to do data loss prevention, like DLP. So if you're concerned about data exfiltration via email or an account takeover with email, then you need your secure email gateway for that. If you want to do secure email, meaning sending somebody an email that has sensitive information in there, so it needs to be encrypted using a registered envelope service, such that the recipient only gets sort of a message that says, hey, there's a message waiting for you, but you gotta go to this web page and you can view it, but it's not stored on your email systems. It protects that email from being intercepted in transit, and it doesn't sit on the recipient's email system. Okay, again, those two work very well together. I think that the email threat defense is really kind of the email security solution of the future. We might find secure email gateways sort of tapering off in the future, but right now, if you want DLP for email or if you want registered envelope service, you have to use the secure email gateway, the email proxy, if you will. Okay. So up next, MFA, SSO, access security. MFA is multi-factor authentication. There are many different methods, and it's ever changing of multi-factor authentication. Some are much more secure than others. Your texts and your calls, your SMS rather, and your phone calls, that's sort of the weakest method of MFA, or one of the weakest, even though a lot of times banks will use those. Any MFA is better than no MFA, but it's one of the weakest methods because phones can be compromised. And you can work your way up to other methods here that are typically available through single sign-on. So single sign-on, the benefit of single sign-on is that you're not having a different set of credentials for each set of cloud applications. Let's say you have 10 cloud applications, you don't need to maintain 10 sets of credentials. Think about onboarding and offboarding, right? Instead, it goes to your IDP, which could be whatever your IDP is, maybe Active Directory, maybe it's Google, or some other IDP can integrate so that you can use that one set of credentials to log into those cloud applications. And when you log into the first one, and prove who you are, right? Through authentication, maybe you need a push, maybe even a verified push. You might need to put in your fingerprint or your facial, scan there. Then any subsequent applications, it's already done all that. It knows it's you, so it doesn't have to go through that again. So that's good for your users. There's less authentication friction, right? So there's less instances. It reduces the instances in which you need to log in, right? Now that goes for a single SSO by itself in its purest sense, a single browser. When you log into that one tab, subsequent tabs on that browser, you won't need to re-authenticate. We'll touch on that a little bit more in just a minute. Another thing that these systems can do is device posture, sort of a lightweight version of what we talked about with ICE. It can do things like, do you have a system password set? Do you have disk encryption turned on? Do you have a desktop firewall? Just the basics to make sure you're good to go. And then zero trust, of course, the principle for any of these applications is prove for each application who you are. It's a principle, right? Passwordless is where after you've initially authenticated yourself, maybe going through the first time to say, here's my username, here's my password. Okay, now I'm going to open my phone. I'm going to send a verified push. I'm going to put in my fingerprint, whatever you have to go through for your initial one. Going forward, it's going to say, I know who you are. You've authenticated here before. And so it might also account for things like you log into the same browser every day, on this same computer every day, from the same location, physical location every day. So it doesn't have to do as many methods to prove who you are. It can say, I know who you are. You've been doing this over and over again. So it has to demand less levels of subsequent authentications to let you in, which your users will like you for because they don't like to have to put in all that stuff. Close them down. And then Passport sort of rides on that SSO where I said if within a single browser, if you log in on one tab, your subsequent tabs, any SSO applications won't need to re-authenticate again. Passport goes above that so that it now crosses across different browsers. So the first one SSO application that logs in, any of your subsequent applications, regardless of the browser, it knows who you are and it can just let you through there with minimal extra authentication, which again, the less instances your users need to continue to put in additional authentication or prove who they are, the happier they're going to be. Okay. Identity intelligence is sort of like, it provides some clarity into your logins across all of your identities. It can analyze the identity behavior. Right. One of the biggest methods of compromise is identity compromise, right? So credential takeover. right? And that just has to do with any number of things. Maybe you got some users there that you just cannot do MFA on for whatever reason. It's a system account or such, right? So identity and intelligence rather can tell you if you have, it can unify your data from multiple IDPs. It can flag stale accounts, excessive permissions, any accounts that have MFA bypass, and give you just a deeper visibility into control of all of your users. Okay. It integrates with those security tools as well, IDPs. Okay. Secure Services Edge is it's a toolbox full of tools, right? Sort of a Swiss Army knife, if you will, and includes any number of things. So think about right now, we'll talk about on-premise access to applications, one aspect of this SPA, secure private access. Now, previously, you'd need to open your VPN, you connect to your VPN, and then more or less you have a virtual Ethernet cable plugged in your laptop to your data center, which all of your applications that are on your data center, you can go across that VPN. Sure, it's got your, you proved who you were. You might have some MFA with that. And then that traffic is encrypted, so it's protected, right? It provides you with that confidentiality. But all of your applications share one segment that go across that. And there's a lot of trust here to say, okay, if you're connected, there's no additional challenges to go into your applications there except for what's provided by the application itself. So in today's day and age, we're worried about protecting applications from each other and application traffic from other application traffic. So with ZTNA, it assumes nothing, or it assumes no trust. So for each of your applications, they each actually have their own tunnel. So this does not provide an extra any overhead and slow things down, surprisingly. But each tunnel, you prove who you are, who and what you are, and now you're given granular access to what application or applications you're allowed to have, and they each have their own little segment. And with that, also, it provides decryption. So without this, when you're accessing your cloud applications directly from home or wherever you're out and about, right, you're just going directly to that cloud application. You're not going through any sort of security tools. So you're trusting that application to provide a full level of security, right? With SPA, you've got the ability to do secure web gateway, which means you can decrypt for the sake of visibility any of that traffic. You can implement a cloud-delivered firewall. You can implement rules. You can check for posture. You can do intrusion prevention to make sure that forbidden classifications aren't stored in certain applications. And it can do step-up authentication if it senses that something is different from where you are or what you're using or how you authenticate. So this provides you a lot more visibility into what's going on, the traffic to and from these applications. So that's SPA. And then SIA is the same concepts, but it applies to your cloud applications. That's the same thing. So SPA is for your on-premise applications. SIA is for your cloud applications. Same sort of thing. DNS protection, cloud delivered firewall decryption, secure web gateway, data loss prevention, intrusion prevention, malware protection, and sandboxing, right? So in addition to one dashboard, that simplifies, once they call it plumbing, once behind the scenes, you've got all your plumbing connected to all your applications. It's just simple as adding users to a user group, and they've got access to specifically the applications they need to have access to and nothing else. So this is the way of today and the future. It's just going to be, you're going to see it more and more and more, this SSE concept. Okay. So here we go. You come in the middle of the day, or first thing in the morning, come in, discover all your endpoints or a subset of your endpoints. You got the dreaded ransomware message. All your files are encrypted. You got to pay up within 5 days with a lot of Bitcoin that you can't afford, or all your data is going to be lost or, released onto the dark web or whatever threats they're going to do. So what do you do? Well, you got all these tools, or some of these tools, and let me just mention, nobody's going to have all those tools that I just talked about. You're going to have the tools that are pertaining to the applications and the sensitivity of the data that are specific to each of you individually, right? No subset of tools applies to everybody. But regardless, you have multiple dashboards with multiple tools, and they don't always completely talk to each other. So how do you pull all that together? You may not have a security analyst or a SecOps team right? That's able to look at all of the data from each of these tools and pull them all together. So what can you do to pull it all together? That's where XDR comes in. So Cisco XDR, Extended Detection and Response, is a single tool so that all of this data, all the telemetry from each of your security tools is pulled into XDR and sewn together to draw the story, to paint the story of what, where, and when, right? So the telemetry, the correlation, you can do a bit of automation and some response when it comes to that. So you're looking at one tool that automatically pulls everything together. Can correlate your data into sophisticated multi-stage attacks within minutes and provide evidence-backed automation for response and reporting. So let's compare XDR to other similar platforms. Okay, your EDR, you might even have a managed EDR, but that's only giving you visibility to what's going on your endpoints. It can't provide any visibility of what's going on with any of your other security tools, right? So your EDR gives endpoint visibility exclusive. Your SIM stores your logs. Your SOAR automates workflows, but XDR combines all of these into a unified AI-driven system. So you can think of XDR as the next generation SOC platform, bringing together detection, investigation, and orchestration in one tool. And so let's just talk about the investigation time, that sort of bottom row. EDR is 4 to 8 hours per incident, per endpoint alert. So each endpoint must be manually validated. You get limited context because you can only see the endpoints and the endpoints that have a client on it. Have no automatic correlation with other systems, just the endpoints that have the clients on there. A SIM can take 8 to 24 hours or even days, and analysts must search and correlate logs manually. The context spread across multiple sources, and there's the ability to have high false positives. And a SOAR to add orchestration after your playbooks are tuned can be 2 to 6 hours. So the automation does help to reduce repetitive steps, but a SOAR still depends on data accuracy from the SIM or EDR and human validation. Compare that to XDR, where you've got 15 to 45 minutes. Okay, and XDR correlates telemetry automatically, applies AI-based prioritization, and guides your analysts through response workflows. Okay, so much quicker. So it draws the story. You see the sort of map that is drawing here of all the players in this one particular attack, everything that was involved, URLs, emails, endpoints, users, everything in one place. So it's for doing threat hunting, it's a fantastic tool. So it creates the attack story, provides continuous monitoring across threat vectors, automatic incident documentation for your 2-day reporting tool, right, for SEA 472. It's got detailed forensics and automatic workflows, again, to produce incident timelines and reports for IoT submission. Here's an example of the same incident we saw before on the previous page, right? So this one, it gives you a nicer report that's just spat out from XDR. Let's look at a sample report. It contains a high-level executive summary, including the status of the incident, includes informative summary of the incident itself, and then a more detailed summary of the events involved in the incident and an incident timeline. So together, that's your full report. So if you've got a tool, pull it all together quickly, you should be able to meet your 2 business day timeline that SCA 472 requires. Okay. So this has spoken to reporting on a security event, right? A security incident. That's all good and fine, but how can we use XDR with these tools to assist in remediation? And this is where I'll pass over control to Matt to do his little talk. So Matt, it's all you.
Thank you, Jason. And while I'm starting the screen share, I'll kind of use an analogy on how I look at XDR compared to K through 12. So if I look at all of the different tools that Jason walked through, you kind of think of them as different sensors. And XDR becomes the way to centralize that data and basically piece all of that information together, all the sensor data together. Now, if I look at that through a K through 12 analogy, I look at something like a fire drill or a fire going off, right? You have your smoke detector, you've got your fire alarm, you've got your sprinklers, you need to trigger the emergency services. And if at any one of those points you don't have your tools working together, they're sort of living in their own individual world, you're not going to have effective outcomes in response. So XDR is the way that sort of engine connects all those tools together. And then where I look at Port 53's involvement is most schools, I don't think I've still yet met any K through 12 who has firefighters on staff, right? Just for that school. That's what Port 53 becomes. Just like most schools don't have designated cybersecurity teams on staff, or maybe very lean, we become the firefighters working for the K through 12, making sure we're containing and putting those fires out as quickly as possible. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Port 53, we started in 2016 as a Cisco umbrella integration organization. So if you caught the Port 53 name, that's the DNS port, and our CEO and founder was at a company called OpenDNS. And actually, OpenDNS was one of the most used K through 12 solutions. That's actually what's evolved into the SSE, a secure service edge product Jason was talking about. So we built our business on helping organizations of all sizes, but really lean IT teams, including K through 12 organizations, leverage DNS as a security protocol, and it kind of organically grew through that Cisco security ecosystem that Jason laid out. In 2020, our customers came to us and said, we love these technologies. We've got all these sensors, all these bells and whistles. One, these tools aren't working together. And then more importantly, I don't have the resources in-house to do much about this. Working with K through 12, I've worked with IT professionals that came from a non-technical background. I was actually out at a talk here in New York, out in Long Island, and there was a lot of folks that started in art and kind of had the digital art that went into the IT background, or folks that were administrative staff that ended up being the most technical individual. So from a resourcing standpoint, our customers came to us and said, we just need assistance. And that's where Port 50 really shifted our focus to be managed security services built on Cisco. So NSI and Cisco are going to provide the great architecture stack, the sensing capability, all of the integrations that Jason was walking through. Port 53 then becomes the human element of this, extending your team, making sure we can deliver across the stack. And what you see here on the screen is our sort of full services portfolio. I'm going to zoom in today on the managed detection response capability. But ultimately, as we grow through the phases of maturity, as we're identifying gaps, as we're looking towards the dark web, as we maybe want to take a step back and get more strategic, Port 53 has a breadth of services to cover all of this. As Jason has mentioned, as you could probably gather, we are very tight with Cisco and very tight with NSI. So we rank as one of the top 1% of partners to Cisco for their managed services practice, security services specifically. So we're one of 8 global providers that have a gold provider status for Cisco Managed XDR. Really what that means is Cisco has audited our service and given us their highest stamp of approval and recommended us to strategic partners like NSI to really have this joint value prop. A big reason for this is we sit in the XDR advisory board and the Cisco Secure Endpoint Advisory Board, really their threat detection portfolio. And we were able to be part of this because a lot of the development work that we've actually built out. So prior to Cisco XDR, we had built a lot of custom integration around Cisco's predecessor tool, and that's really led Cisco XDR where it is today as a product. So we've kept a very strong relationship, but ultimately delivering on the human and service outcomes beyond what the technology stack can offer by itself. The term MDR, actually, there's too many terms thrown around in the cybersecurity space, too many acronyms. So to just kind of level set, managed detection response is what MDR stands for. Think of it as Security Operations Center as a service. And that's what people used to call it, SOC as a service. So I use them interchangeably, but the idea is you've got all of these tools, your EDR, your SSE, XDR, bringing all that together. MDR is the human element. So at the bottom, most of our organizations have some portfolio of technology. In a lot of cases, they put the right type of protective capability in place. Now they're focusing on the detection, but ultimately where they lack is the process and the people, right? If they're looking at processes, how well do our humans identify the threats? How sophisticated are we in that response process? Can we handle this during the middle of the night? Have we practiced this? Do we have the tabletop expertise that we've actually gone through to understand what a breach would look like? And at the end of the day, do we have the humans to actually do this? If I were faced with a 2 a.m. Sunday ransomware threat and I have signals coming from all my different environments, do I have the ability to respond as part of the in-house team? And in K-12, maybe more than any other vertical we work with, that tends to be the leanest part of the IT team, right? Their security expertise. So that's what our focus is being an augmentation of cyber teams. And in a lot of cases, becoming the cyber team. But there's really three main pillars we look at. First is implementing, architecting, and optimizing. Our goal is not to just assume that all the tools in place are fine-tuned or to the best of their ability. There are so many different bells and whistles, not just in the Cisco world, but across the entire cybersecurity landscape. And our goal is to take both the existing investments and then work hand in hand with NSI to make sure you have the right investments, and then make sure that those investments are leveraged to the best of their ability. And we walk into organizations that have these awesome portfolios, but maybe they're 50% optimized in terms of the capability just because they don't have the cycles in-house to deal with that. That's our first core focus. Let's make sure your tools are humming, things are working well, we're blocking threats before we even start talking about that detection phase. The next focus is how do we apply automation at scale? All right, there's a lot of buzz going on around AI and orchestration, and there's some great use cases. I think the goal is to find the proper use case on an organization by organization basis. And automation enables scalability for our organizations, right? Instead of them always having to rely on manual processes in-house, and instead of us as the SOC always relying on manual processes, allowing automation to show us the right type of data more effectively. Or maybe we allow automation to help us trigger the right type of action to prevent ransomware. But our goal as part of our community service is to implement the right type of playbooks and orchestration into our clients' environments so that they get the most out of the architecture, not just the individual tools. And then most importantly is detect, respond, and doing so 24/7. We have lots of ransomware cases that we've studied specifically for K-12. And unfortunately, the bad actors are sophisticated. They're motivated, as Jason had all the stats. They target during the night. They target during holidays, weekends, when they know the IT staff aren't working, right? They'll actually intentionally remain dormant and then wait to exfiltrate or encrypt until that stage. And so we're seeing that the need for 24/7 has just become more and more critical. Now, not all managed detection response providers are built the same, and this is a good visual to kind of break down how we operate. A lot of providers start their engagement at the detection level, whether that's just looking at the endpoint, whether they're using something like a legacy SIM approach, or whether they've actually evolved into a more advanced XDR, next-gen backbone. Most providers, from a service perspective, start their engagement here at the detection. And in our eyes, working with schools, that's just kind of late in the process. We're assuming that their tools are protecting to the best of their ability, when in the reality, most of the K-12 organizations we work with just haven't even gotten up to that phase. So kind of revisiting what our first step is we help up here at the front level actually protect and prevent threats first. And we do that by something we call co-management at the underlying control level. Yes, we'll have access to XDR as our SOC team, but we're also going to have access to the EDR. We'll have access to the IPS, the SSC, whatever we can to be a true extension of your cybersecurity team, rather than just assuming that we're going to wait for the detection of the events. Now, Cisco XDR becomes the critical engine for response. It'd be really hard for our team to hit our effective response times in minutes if we were only operating out of those individual tools. XDR, going back to that fire analogy, it's what provides the connection between our sensors. It's what takes the data across each one of these tools and makes sense out of that data through correlation. And then the flip side is we don't want to just see more actionable data. We want to be able to act quickly on that. And Cisco XDR can do that in a fully automated sense. 453 has built a lot of custom playbooks to help kind of push the edge of automation for our organizations. But more than often than not, our clients prefer that there's a human in the loop part of that orchestration, where XDR shows us high criticality incident declaration, and then we have a human review that. And the human in the loop allows us to really apply the right type of business intuition, understanding how staff versus students might be accessing data, how their remote Chromebook footprint might actually be impacted, rather than just assuming everything's the same across each vertical. And at that point, once the human has decided, yes, this is in fact an incident, our team can then trigger the isolation command and send a command back down to the endpoint to make sure that device can't spread ransomware laterally. So whatever the flavor of human versus automation is, we're going to build that out for each of our clients. But XDR becomes the backbone of where all that architecture happens. And then the question again is, we've gotten to the fire alarm, we've called the emergency services, who's then supposed to put the fire out? And that's the core focus of Port 53 as a service provider. A core focus of our overall program is collaboration. And I think this is very important if you look at the bottom note there. As a lot of our other MDR, or as a lot of the MDR market has scaled, a lot of organizations have shifted into over automation, where they kind of treat every customer the same, right? And they do that because they need to basically take on thousands and thousands of customers. Whereas right now, our focus is really focused on adaptation and collaboration with our customers, making sure that we're identifying the right use case for response versus collaboration, that we provide you the tools so your team can be involved, but still at the end of the day, take a large majority of that cyber burden off of your team. What I consider what's the most important part of a security response or of an MDR, it's the security event response lifecycle. So this is really what needs to happen to respond to an event regardless of the team involved. You need to detect, triage, alert the necessary parties, analyze the indicators of compromise, contain, remediate before it spreads, recover the lost systems or data, and then sit down at the end of all of this to learn and improve. That's a big ask for any IT team. We work with banks and they're resource restrained, and they have significantly more funding and resources than a K through 12. For K through 12, it's a whole nother level of resource restraint. Now, the traditional MDR model was really focused on the alerting use case. Providers would basically backhaul all their data into a SIM, create the custom eventing use cases, but ultimately pass the alert over to the internal customer. When I go back to my fire alarm analogy, they're going to call you in the middle of the night and tell you that there's a fire going on. So from not having that alert to having that is a really good step in the right direction, right? We're at least now getting alerted in the middle of the night to go basically put the fire out. The problem then is most K through 12 organizations aren't the firefighters. They don't have the designated security staff in-house to take that action. And that's still too much burden to put onto them. So our core focus is being the first responders, taking action on behalf of our customers. And again, we're ultimately going to build this based off of our customers' level of comfort and the playbooks, how involved they want to be. All of our K through 12 customers have us going through at minimum containment on their behalf. So if I see a 2 a.m. Sunday ransomware, I see telemetry from the EDR, I see telemetry from the Edge and the SSE product, I see telemetry from the identity, from the email, we are still going to contact the internal IT team and security team, but we're going to call you and say, we've already isolated this host, right? This device cannot speak laterally to another host or node in the network. We've taken this account offline, whether it's an Entra ID or in Google's IDP, and a lot of schools have sort of a joint environment. We've removed this malicious actor from that account. We've scrubbed this email inbox. If I look at the journaling capability Jason was talking about with email threat defense, we can take one phishing link that we've seen and make sure that nobody across the fleet of mailboxes has seen that phishing alert. But the goal is to contain, not just put more of that burden of alerting onto our customers. And then from there, we work hand in hand with our customers to clean the environment out. So this is in our eyes what it really means to be a response. You hear response a lot in the industry. A response in our eyes is containment first. Let us as the provider put the fire out, and then we'll work together to build the organization back to where it needs to be. Get the school back to what's most important, which is learning. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of overscaling and automation in the MDR market. We put a really big focus on human in the loop and human touch. So we use AI, yes, we use automation. That is really pre-built into all the technology these days. That takes us through the alert phase. Let's let AI show us more critical data to respond to. Let it enrich it with third-party sources so we can see what other schools might be impacted by. However, we then want to apply a human who can use the business intuition. Right? The human can understand this is how students are learning. This is how they have a hybrid or remote workforce environment, a learning environment with Chromebooks. Let's make sure we apply the right type of response based off of that. Or, hey, we know it's a summer vacation for students and staff right now, here's how we might tweak our processes and reduce the false positive rate. But the goal is to have this mix of automation and AI giving us more accurate data and then letting a human make a lot of the actual decisions. Beyond the 24/7 response capability, we have 2 ongoing cadences with our customers. So we have a technical consultation. This is a monthly technical meeting with the SOC program. This is to go over all the previous month's event activity. It's also an opportunity to revisit the best practice consultation and process review, and ultimately keeping on top of all of these tools and updates, right? Cisco does an awesome job of putting new product sets, feature sets in. They do an awesome job of buying new companies and folding that telemetry into their architecture. We don't expect that our clients should be the ones staying on top of that. And that's a big focus of those meetings, is how do we, on an ongoing basis, improve the maturity of our organizations. And separate to that, we have what I call a checks and balance. It's the business outcomes meeting to make sure our customers are still happy, that we are applying best practices from the other K-12 organizations that we've actually worked with. What are they seeing from a threat perspective? How can we use their learning lessons to help you mitigate threats earlier on? But you have this dual cadence going on to really make sure you feel like we're an extension of your team, and that we're getting your non-technical stakeholders, maybe your superintendents, aware of what's going on in the cybersecurity landscape. One of the core elements of our program is ensuring that you have the tools. So all the tools that Jason mentioned, those would all be licensed to you through NSI, which means you have full visibility into all of the data Port 53 is working on, and you have full access into the tech stack. However, on top of that, we do have a proprietary platform for high-level executive reports and for SLA tracking. And this report, or this platform, was really designed to answer the question from a financial stakeholder, a superintendent or head of finance at the school, who says, I'm paying for this, what's my value? And this is a great way for us to bubble events, critical incidents, the percentage of SLAs we've met. We have some cybersecurity news, so you can stay on top of some of the emerging trends. And by popular request from our customers, this was by far the biggest thing that came up on the quarterly meetings, was being able to interface with the SOC program via mobile app. So we have this available on iOS right now to allow our customers to engage with the SOC and the customer platform, to see the trends over time, to see open tickets, to approve or deny actions, to turn the noise up. They want to be more included, or there's too much noise, let's turn the noise down. But this is a way so that you can go back to, in your off hours, spending time with your family, vacationing, and maybe checking your phone so you know what's going on, but not having to pick up a phone call or get on a war room, when in reality we can get you back to doing what you should be during those times. And just a pretty cool real world example for one of our K-12 organizations. This is based off of data back in April. So we were able to respond to 931 security events in the month of April for this organization. They had a defense in depth strategy with endpoint, network, DNS, all of those sensors flowing through XDR. And as we looked at the business outcome of this, the way the organization measured this is with the 24/7 coverage, there are 1,864 after hours incidents handled when their staff wasn't working. So again, if we look at when bad actors are most motivated, when they're most successful, it's during those down hours when the IT teams aren't on staff. And this just showed the breadth of what we were able to deliver for this one K-12 organization. And we've been able to deliver this for very similar capacities across the K-12 landscape. Just to round it out, we're really focused on customer success. So we have about 94% renewal rate. A large majority of that has to do with us just keeping on cadence, being an extension of our team, making sure we're in alignment of what makes them happy and what's a successful program. And from an overall SLA performance since 2020, so for the last 5 or now almost 6 years, we've had a 99.95% SLA met. So we got a lot of success, a lot of backing from the likes of Cisco, and just an awesome partnership we've been able to drive with NSI to deliver ultimately at the end of the day what's most important, which is security outcomes. In terms of next steps, we'd love to do a whiteboarding or consulting session. Both NSI and Port 53 really believe in that sort of consultative feel and making sure we're aligning to the right step where you are in your cyber maturity. Or if you think this is something that really jumps out and this is something I want to dive into, we can do an XDR and MDR demo and take a peek under the hood to see if it's the right fit for your organization.